Member for Caroni Central.
I would like to say to the Honorable Attorney General, through you, Madam Speaker, that the opposition did not participate in the Special Select Committee because we opposed the idea of a Special Select Committee from the beginning. If we would read the standing orders of this Parliament, we would see that there is an official period from July to the end of August in which members of Parliament are given the liberty, because it is in the standing orders, to be able to plan their business outside of parliamentary obligations. And although the members on the opposite side have violated those standing orders on occasion, the members of the opposition have a right, if they have to travel or do business other than parliamentary business, to do that during the period between July and early September, the end of August, when they are guaranteed that time by the Parliament. So for the member for San Fernando West and Attorney General to speak about the fact that they did not want to meet during that period, I think the member for San Fernando West would better explain why it is, given the mandate of handling 3 bills, they only handled 1 bill and brought it here as a full report of the committee. Now, the Attorney General, you know, likes to be pejorative, likes to ridicule members of the House, and you were sitting there, Madam Speaker, and listening to his speech as I was listening. But if you say anything here in the House, he's one of the first to get up and cite a standing order. He likes to use scare tactics, as he does here, you know, all the things that would happen. If we got here to this point, Mr. Attorney General, where today is the deadline, and everything is going to fall down because we did not meet this deadline, how did we get here? Who brought us here? I am responding to the
member for Caroni Central. You haven't heard yet what I've risen to say. Okay? Now, I would like to just caution all members in that what we are here is about a specific report which is before us. I allowed, for sort of context, the member for Naparima to deal extensively with a lot of matters which I would call historical. Those matters were responded to by the Attorney General. And therefore, I am going to be very, very strict moving forward from here with respect to what is before us. I think the history has been given on one side, and all the other statements that are attendant to that, those were answered. This debate is not about the history. This debate is now about something specific before us, which is the report of the Special Select Committee. I allowed you, Caroni Central, to deal with the fact of answer why you all weren't there. I am not going to allow any member to go back now, again, into history. We are dealing with something specifically before us.
Madam Speaker, with all due respect to you, the Attorney General spoke. This is a debate. I am responding to things that the Attorney General said. And I ask that under the clear rules of Parliament, that I be allowed to respond to the Attorney General.
And member for Caroni Central, under the clear rules of Parliament, and debate, you're allowed to respond. Yes. And all I'm saying is that as far as the matters relate to what is before us today, I am not at all going to restrict that. As far as historical matters, it was raised on one side, it was responded to by another side. On the other side, I am not going to let a second, third, fourth bite of that same cherry. Let's deal with what is before us today, please. Thank you.
Madam, I assure you that I will debate the matter before this House, which is the bill. But I want to ask you, please.
Continue, please, member for Caroni Central. Please continue.
If this bill was so important, Mr. AG, why don't you just work backwards from what you had to do to make sure that the agenda was achieved? So that we could get a desirable outcome. But I sense something here, you know. The AG worked through the bill clause by clause. And he worked through the bill clause by clause, and he said, he cited every single clause which did not require a special majority. And he went through the clauses, I think he identified them as 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, which require a special majority. And he went on to say that he is not going to go before any international committee and have to explain why the government, so to speak, the country, is not ready. And he's not about to say that he is not able to deliver because of the opposition. And I sense that what the AG is saying, Madam Speaker, is that he is prepared in this bill to take out the clauses that have to do with the special majority and to pass an innocuous bill in order to make an international arrangement. If the AG does not mean to say so, I'm prepared to sit down for him to respond.
Speaker, if the honourable member is giving way, the debate is on. It may be premature of me to make that recommendation if the honourable members are agreeing to pass the bill. So the ball is in your court.
The ball is in all of our courts. So, the Attorney General, Madam Speaker, even by his intervention now, is basically saying that he is prepared to take a certain course to water down this bill in order to proceed in a certain way. And I want to say that part of the problem that we have in handling legislation in this Parliament is the way the government indeed handles legislation. So, for instance, Madam Speaker, the AG shared with us some time ago, about a year after they came into office, a legislative agenda. And if you look at the legislation that we have had before this House since that time, there is a very wide gap between the stated legislation agenda and what we have been discussing in this House. There have been a series of special majority laws that have been brought before this Honorable House, Madam Speaker. And in bringing those pieces of legislation which require a special majority, the strategy and the style is always to browbeat the opposition, first in Parliament and secondly outside, in order to get the opposition to conform. I can cite examples, but it's not necessary because everyone in this Parliament is aware of it, and the general public is aware of it as well. Now, there have been instances as well where the Attorney General has brought at least one bill which started out with a special majority, and he has reversed that process and caused it to be passed by simple majority. So I am relating to this matter to what I sense as the AG's strategy for dealing with this particular matter and the opposition here today. Some of these have been tested in court and found wanting. Now, whenever they've had bills that require a simple majority, any amendments that we put forward never count. They're never taken into account. And when there is a bill that requires two-thirds majority, as long as we were to articulate them or put them forward, they suddenly are confiscated by the government and then brought as the amendments in the House of Representatives. This is their pattern.
Remember, Fanapurima, certain language, please. All right? Please. Member for Caroni.
Okay. This is their pattern. But this particular bill here today, the AG also mentioned about the Tax Information Exchange Treaty of 1989, of which I was part. And that was a different time. I remember in the committee meeting when we met on that matter, the AG wasn't even aware that we had this exchange treaty agreement with the US. And it was the head of the BIR who indicated to us that this law was in fact passed in 1989. And the double taxation agreement, sorry. And what's that? It is true, it's a fact. And that bill was the one that made it possible. And it is a different time today. It's a more complex time. It's a very difficult time. And it is not that we are not aware of the consequences for banks, Madam Speaker. We understand what is happening in the world system. We understand that big banks abroad do not want to worry about little banks in little countries and little customers in these countries when they could be going after the customers in the world, which are huge asset base and that are more lucrative to them in the banking industry. We understand that very well. And we understand what are the implications for the banks here. We are very sensitive to it because we understand it's not just a banking problem, it's a customer problem, and it's a country problem. We know the consequences for business. If your banks are in jeopardy and in difficulty, it is very hard to conduct international business. It's hard to export, it's hard to import. We understand it very well. We know the consequences for citizens. And I heard the AG using his emotional best appeal today, talking about the consequences for ordinary citizens. We understand that. If you have to get a cash transfer, if you have to use a credit card or buy something online, we understand it very well. We know the consequences for Trinidad and Tobago. Because if we allowed ourselves to slip in the global system and became one of those backward countries, what would happen to us is that we would find it very difficult to navigate regionally and internationally in the world. And we understand those things. But all of these things and all of these concerns, Madam Speaker, does not take away from the government the responsibility of meeting its international obligations, meeting its parliamentary obligations, and meeting its legislative agenda obligations properly. And I want to say that, in my estimation, they have entirely failed on 3 counts. They have mismanaged their international relations because all the issues he is accusing the member for Naparima about not understanding, it is because they were confused about the obligation to the OECD, the Global Forum, FATF, etc., that we end up in this position. And you have one Minister of Finance following one agenda, and the AG following another agenda, and all of them crashing into one another.
It's true.
Don't come here and blame the opposition for your incompetence. And then come in the parliament and blame us, set up meeting on the political platform to blame us and to vilify us, and get the business.
I want to hear a member for Caroni Central. And you see this animated kind of behavior? I don't think it's parliamentary. I'm not going to tolerate it. Member for Caroni Central, please continue.
And so you do all of these things. You make mistakes. You cause blunders. You get us into a situation where always, all of these things, every one of them is a crisis. What about the clause? I know the clauses. I could tell you. I could tell you. I wouldn't be sidetracked by you. You always want to tell us who should speak on this side.
But for Caroni Central, if you just ignore the crosstalk and direct your contribution here, I'm sure you wouldn't be sidetracked at all. Just direct it this way. And I will just advise the members of the front bench on my right to please observe Standing Order 53. I would like to hear Caroni Central, please.
As I said, you created a crisis, and the end result is that we are here. And not only did you now politicize it on the platform, politicize it here, but you got the business community to get up and speak about it. You say here that all of them, everybody, want the bill to pass without amendment. That is not true. That is not true at all. They want the bill to pass, as we want the bill to pass. They want the other 2 pieces of legislation and any other related pieces of legislation to pass, because what are the bankers concerned about? They are concerned about correspondent banking, and they are concerned about not being in a situation where they are less than a stand-up bank in the world system. That is what they are interested in. And they are not concerned about some of the issues here, anything other than what would give them the integrity as a bank or as a banking sector. The business community too wants to do its business, and that's what they're concerned about. But we in the legislature have to be concerned about more things, including, and this is an important aspect of parliamentary duty, which is public interest, public good. That is part of it. It is a very important part of it. And you can't come here last minute creating a crisis, creating a situation in which you take us to the edge, so to speak, telling the country that we are taking you to the edge, as you did with FATCA, as you did with the anti-gang bill, and as you are now doing with this income tax bill. And as the Minister of Finance rightly said, you have two bills there. In committee, suspended now because of how you have handled that particular Joint Select Committee, which also need to be addressed in this country. Now, in this document here, we have
53, standing order 53.
Members, Degomati Northeast, Port of Spain, North, could you all kindly please contain the talk and the level, okay? We're here to listen to member for Caroni Central. Please continue, member.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. In this particular document here, we have the report, okay? We have the amended bill. We have the report on the stakeholder consultation. We have, well, I will stop at that point because I want to make a few points on some of these. When you read on page 7 here, you read Forum, Transparency and Exchange of Information for Tax Purposes. And you have here 2.16. According to the Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information, I simply want to point to one phrase: implementation of standards of transparency and exchange of information for tax purposes. So in a fundamental way, this whole bill is about exchange under conditions of transparency. And yet in this bill, in which the major concern, Madam Speaker, is transparency of transactions involving customers with bank accounts who are under the jurisdictional authority of the particular signatories to these agreements, one of the issues that has come up in the debate in the Joint Select Committee and in the Parliament and in the letter of the leader of the opposition to the Minister of Finance is the question of transparency and distribution of information. So here you are debating a bill about transparency and free exchange of information. And you don't have transparency here and free exchange of information among the members of the Parliament.
What a shame.
The second thing is the that the way the report is written, Madam Speaker. If you look on page 10, 2.34, it says here, furthermore, during the public hearing on Wednesday, November 28, 2018, the Deputy Chairperson of NAMLC cautioned that if the Income Tax Amendment Bill 2018 was not passed by November 30th, and this would result in downgrading of Trinidad and Tobago from a gray list to a blacklist. This in turn will result in measures meted out to Trinidad and Tobago by correspondent banks, some of which are highlighted in 2.3. I wonder if this person knows that we're on the blacklist already for nearly a year. I wonder if the government knows that. And I wonder if the government knows that it's said in this parliament that the reason they want to pass this bill and the reason they sent the other two bills to the Joint Select Committee to be considered together to come to the parliament was because they wanted to get off of the blacklist. And they want to come and accuse us of laziness and sloppy thinking. Boy, I don't think Olio were ready for government.
Next 50 years.
Olio wasn't ready for government in 2015, and everything in the last 3.5 years tells you that you're never going to be ready. I want to say that in the stakeholders consultation here, contrary to what the AG says, that all of them want to pass a bill without amendment, that is not true. There are issues that are raised here. I will not raise the matter of AmCham because it concerns my son. But whatever he said, I can tell you it comes from a good, solid, independent mind. And the second thing that I would like to say is that there are other chambers in here, other than AmCham, that mention the fact that they have concerns that they want addressed in the legislation as well. I want to say as well that if the AG and the Minister of Finance would probably agree that this version of the bill which they brought from the Select Committee in which we did not participate is a better version of the bill than the one that came here a week ago. If they would agree to that, I would like to say that they should say thank you. They should say thank you to the opposition for raising the issues, piling on the pressure for the leader of the opposition for writing a letter to the Minister of Finance, for raising all the issues of concern, issues which they did not take into account in the JSC, which they took into account in the Parliament after the JSC, and other issues which they took into account on the basis of issues raised in the letter and issues raised in the public domain by translation of the issues in that letter to the public at large through the media, and we thank the media for that.
Well put it.
So this might be a better version of the bill. But notwithstanding that, it is not the desirable version that we want that is complementary to the other two.
What exactly is wrong with it?
I do not wish to engage the AG in that matter. The AG had 45 minutes to speak. And he says, I am engaging the bill.
Please leave Caroni Central. Member for Caroni Central, you continue, please. Direct your contribution this way.
Okay. So the opposition resistance has been a significant contribution to democracy in this country. It was a significant contribution to the passage of a superior FATCA bill, no matter what they say.
The Honorable, the Speaker.
Central.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. As I continue on this bill before the Honorable House, I want to say that it has been long established, both in the consultations that were held a few days ago by the Select Committee, whose report we have in our hands in this House, and in the debate on the prior version of this bill and on this current amended bill brought to this House on two separate occasions, that this bill alone, the passage of this bill alone, will not get us off the blacklist. It has been established too, I think, that the pressure of the opposition, the consultations, the articulation of different positions has led to what is clearly an improved version of the bill here today. And how do we then know that it will not be possible to improve this bill by further amendments if we were to have them in a joint select committee with the other two bills to look at the capacity for harmonization and alignment and achievement of the objective of getting this country clearly off the blacklist? Because that is what will strengthen the banking sector. That is what will strengthen the business sector. That is what will strengthen the citizens as the consuming sector in this country, who are now all global consumers. And that is what will strengthen Trinidad and Tobago as a national jurisdiction, but also as an economic jurisdiction in charge of its own affairs, but connected to the rest of the world. You know, the member for San Fernando West, the Attorney General, objected to many things that the member for Naparima said, and objected to the leader of the opposition even getting up to object about whether we should debate this, since from her point of view, we did not have 24 hours notice. And the Attorney General, especially in the capacity as Attorney General, should know that it is the right of members here to get up and to speak and to object and to raise issues and to challenge. That is the nature of parliamentary debate and parliamentary discussion and parliamentary democracy. That should not upset the AG, especially since he is often a principal objector in many situations. But that is what democracy is about. And as I said before, Madam Speaker, and it's worth emphasizing, that one of the very, very important roles of an opposition is to strengthen the democratic process. If you have weak opposition, you have a weak governance system. If you have weak opposition, you have a weak parliamentary system. And if you have a government that can bully its way through legislation by cowing the opposition, you will get bad legislation. And therefore, the democracy depends on this interplay. The democracy also depends, Madam Deputy Speaker, on how you cultivate. Madam Speaker, sorry. Madam Speaker, how you cultivate and nurture the democratic process. And had the Minister of Finance or maybe the AG approached this whole matter of this particular set of bills differently, we might not be in this place that we are in today. Because the record of the government, I want to emphasize, because they have been giving the population the wrong impression. I want to read from page 4 of the leader of the opposition's letter to the Minister of Finance. And in page 4, item 16 in her text, she says, the automatic exchange of information implementation report 2018 by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, was issued yesterday. Now, her letter was November 22nd, so this is November 21st, by the Global Forum on Transparency and Exchange of Information for Tax Purposes plenary meeting held on 20th to 22nd of November 2018 at Punta del Este, Uruguay, and indicates the following with respect to Trinidad and Tobago. And she cites domestic and international legal framework not in place, convention not signed, multilateral competent authority agreement not signed, common transmission system status have not yet signed the CTS use agreement, primary legislation not in place, secondary legislation and regulations not yet in place. And she observes in her letter, the government's performance against every single indicator is nil. And that is the truth of the matter that we are dealing with here. The government has basically hemmed and hawed on this matter. I don't know what the reason is. There may have been good reasons, I don't know. But they have hemmed and hawed on the matter. And the end result is that we ended up with a crisis situation which they have had to manage. And had they managed it differently, in a way that is respectful of the opposition, respectful of the democracy, it might have been a little different. So the member for San Fernando West, the Attorney General, I suppose this is what he would call part of his follow the money legislation. And he is in a hurry to pass this bill because he said that this is, despite his agenda, his legislative agenda, these things, he said, are now his main and principal agenda. And now he is prepared to pass all of these bills, and as I said, he seems to be indicating, Madam Speaker, I cannot be sure, I do not know, and I don't know what is in the Attorney General's head, but he seems to be contemplating, as he has done before, withholding those clauses that may require a two-thirds majority in order to create the conditions in which they can get a simple majority bill. My own feeling is that if they pass a simple majority bill here, it will not meet the requirements that are necessary to deal with, what can I say, international requirements. They may well have to, if they do that in the way that they are suggesting, have to deal with the matters in the other bill, which is why the three bills are so critical, you see. You see? Because what you give in one, you can take in each other. It's not that the bills are not separate. It's not that they do not have jurisdictional power in their own right. But it is when you put them together, when you harmonize them, when you align them, then it gives a bigger picture. Just as we are dealing with an international system in which what they are really trying to do is the flow of money and finance, and what they are really concerned with in these bills, in all of these bills, not this bill only for taxation. What they are concerned with really are money laundering issues. That's what they're concerned about. They don't want dirty money in the system. They don't want the dirty money to get away in the system, whether it is in Trinidad and Tobago or Paris. And the second thing is that they are concerned about terrorism issues. Because it's not just follow the money, it's follow the terrorists. It's not just follow the money, it's follow the crooked person with money laundering habits. That is what it is about. And the Attorney General talks here about the fact, he says, you know, deal with the bill. I have dealt with the pertinent issues in the bill because the bill is a few clauses and there are a few amendments. You wouldn't even know if I did. So,
Where is that? What kind of
Please.
behavior?
you wouldn't know.
Member for Laventille West, please continue, sir.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
member for Caroni Central.
how he behaves when they get beaten.
Play with your device.
There is one issue here under that particular clause, I'm trying to find it, in which when they identify under the Proceeds of Crime Act, this is on page 57, it would be 6B, under the Proceeds of Crime, under the Terrorism Act, under the Prevention of Corruption Act, all of which are the things that they are really dealing with here. They have here involving fraud or dishonesty. And the problem with that particular clause, of course, is that it's a broad clause related to what? Okay? Which is the whole issue of how you make this legislation precise. How do you bring precision to it? And how do you bring precision to it, taking into account the international obligations that you have and you must meet, taking into account that what you are dealing with are these issues here, which are paramount, which are most significant, but taking into account as well that when you pass the legislation, you want to have a certain amount of constitutional protection for the person who is an ordinary citizen in the country, not involved in any kind of commerce or international accounts or anything like that. And you do not want that to be part of it. So for instance, in the budget, there was an issue having to do with raising the fine for the crime of misrepresenting information to the BIR from $50,000 to $250,000. I asked two questions about that during the budget debate, Madam Speaker. The first question I asked was directly to the Minister of Finance, whether, in fact, this is going to be administered by the BIR, whether this matter is going to go to court, or whether a decision is going to be made. I asked the same question when the BIR came here during the committee stage, which you chair. I did not get a satisfactory answer for that. And I do not know whether what I am saying now is, in fact, a possible reality. But for instance, would it be possible to cite something like that as tax evasion, and on the basis of that, use this law, which is not meant for that, not meant for that at all, because that has nothing to do with a citizen under jurisdiction because of an account in some other country? Would that be possible to use this legislation for a person like that? Now, crimes must be dealt with. I have no problem. But there are laws to deal with those crimes. What I don't want is for a person under something like that to come under this what is essentially an international taxation issue. And I believe that that is a wrong jurisdiction for it. So I think that that particular clause is too wide. I close, Madam Speaker. I've made my points. And I close by saying that the government is entirely within its rights to take responsibility for what has happened in this bill. I do not blame them. I cast no blame on anybody. The point is, we hear the whole country is going to be affected. Everybody is going to be affected who is supposed to be affected by this. And the whole purpose of this bill and the other two bills is to take us out of the blacklist and give us a clean slate in the international system. We are prepared to do that. We want to do that. The United National Congress and the opposition of this country want to make sure that Trinidad and Tobago is okay in the world. And on the basis of that, I would like to take the position that has been articulated very, very clearly in a letter to the Minister of Finance by the by the leader of the opposition. And today, the member for Diego Martin Northeast, the Honorable Minister of Finance, said that they are prepared and bring back the other 2 bills by the 27th of December. I think if we put those 3 bills together, we'll be off the blacklist having done this by the 27th of December. So let us do the right thing. Let us do it well. Let us pass good legislation. Let us harmonize the 3 pieces of legislation. Let us align them in such a way that when Trinidad and Tobago speaks to the world, the Attorney General will not have to pass legislation less than is needed here in order to stand up and be strong over there. Let us pass real legislation. Let us do it together, and let us do it the best that we can as a parliamentary community on behalf of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, be they bankers, be they businessmen, be they citizens, or be they anybody, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, who has an interest in seeing a very strong financial system and a strong economy for Trinidad and Tobago with respect in the global system. We stand for that on the side of the opposition.